Firmly grasp it in your hand. Firmly grasp it. Firmly grasp it! That ought to do it.
A common misconception in political conversation in both the United States and in Canada is that leftists are allied with liberals and/or are liberals. Leftists such as myself, I am a communist, find this to be very inaccurate. The left stands against imperialism and imperialist war, while liberals excuse their barbaric, jingoistic parasitism with cries of human rights and democracy, as if their bourgeois governments give two fucks about these abstract concepts. If liberals supported human rights, they wouldn't be supporting trade sanctions and/or wars started by their governments that have killed huge amounts of people and destroyed the livelihoods of its survivors. In Iraq, for example, the combination of U.S. intervention and sanctions had a really terrible effect on the Iraqi people. In 1990, when the sanctions started, Iraq's GDP per capita was a bit over $10,000. In 2004, at Saddam's overthrow, it was at $1,391.61 American. The death tolls for these sanctions and wars vary widely. Some say 170,000 were killed, some say 500,000, some say 1 million. It's quite complicated pinpointing a precise death toll due to the various estimates among different institutions, and the fact that some of them, include the Gulf War, some of them include the sanctions, some of them include the overthrow of Saddam, some of them include a combination, some of them include all three. So I'm not really going to try. I'm just going to acknowledge that it killed lots of people and that it was an atrocity committed against the Iraqi people. Even the liberals that are more critical of U.S. foreign policy are always critical of it in the past tense. Sure, they may criticize actions in Iraq and Libya, but when the next imperialist war comes along, they always fall right in line with their government, refusing to stand up against their own government's crimes, against whatever country the West has in its crosshairs. They also refuse to acknowledge the evil nature of their governments. Okay, that's a bit moralistic. Not evil, imperialist, insisting that it was just an accident. My government would never intentionally destroy the lives of people living in the third world countries for my government's own financial interests. That's just a conspiracy. Actually, not just the government's financial interests, the whole, interests of the economy within the nation that the imperialist government rules in general. Everyone benefits from imperialism, even the working class. It's absurd that they cannot see their own government's hypocrisy in being selective about which countries need human rights. After all, the United States and Canadian governments both have extensive ties with Saudi Arabia, including exporting a high amount of weapons to this country. A state which embraces the ultra-right-wing ideology of Wahhabism, what Westerners tend to generalize all Muslims as without realizing that they are in reality the primary victims of Wahhabist violence. This government has gay people killed, and shares the same ideology with little groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The groups that are running around fucking up the lives of innocent people in Iraq, Libya, and Syria. As a footnote, Al-Qaeda did 9/11, but the death toll of this event is far less than the toll of people killed in the Middle East. Liberals and right-wingers seem to forget that because apparently your life only matters if you're white. So in conclusion, leftists hate liberals because they have their heads shoved so far up their own asses that they can taste what they just ate. They refuse to acknowledge the shitty imperialist nature of their government, refuse to oppose their government's war crimes as they happen, and scream about human rights abuses, but stay silent about abuses in others.